Hi, I'm Rich Baker from Rollin' and Rich's, and this is Improv Breakdown.
Anybody here ever seen competitive improv? And dude, the first couple weeks, 10, 20 people get up and leave right away. Right away. They're like, yep.
Yay!
Let's suggest I was that. Wow.
Any different things? My hands. It's like,
Yeah.
That was it. Welcome to the Improv Breakdown. I got Jay Sukow with me, the man, the myth, the legend, a mentor, a teacher of mine. So many things I could say about you. Thanks so much for being on my show, my friend.
Oh, Rich, thanks, buddy. It's always fun talking with you.
Yeah. Oh man. I was just thinking this time last year we were at, or almost this time last year we were at BJ Lang's 4th of July party.
Yes.
Remember that? That was like a zillion years ago, and like.
Yes.
There weren't that many improvisers there, and I felt like you and me were just kind of like swapping bits for a good hour, and I was like, that was the best party I've been to forever.
Well, I was so glad to see you there because, yeah, it was like, you know, we know BJ through like improv circles, yeah. But then you get there and you're like, okay, who do I know? And I Laura McGee was there.
Yes, so yes.
Like, and hearing some fun stories about her, and she's also a pilot, so hearing those stories, and then you were there, and it was like, okay, cool, because I didn't come with anyone, so I'm like, I kind of forced myself to go because
me too.
I had right about that time, I think we had filed for divorce, my wife, my ex and I, right around like July 4th. It was probably the 2nd.
I remember at the party asking you about like, and you were like, well, funny story.
Please, surprise.
I was
like, and I was like, I was looking to just go to this party. I was looking to go somewhere so I wouldn't just be
somewhere different. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to get out, you know?
I have a whole list of questions, but this is fascinating to me because like, we're not exclusionary people. It's not like we go to a party and we go, I don't want to talk to these non-comedians. No. It's that when we try, it doesn't always work, right?
Yeah, well,
at least that's my experience. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think like improvisers especially are like the most interesting people that are around, and they're more, I guess, outgoing or more able to hide their social anxiety. And they go in these situations, and when you're not in a conversation sometime with an improviser, sometimes it does feel like, all right, cool, we got nothing. What are you talking about? Cool.
There's nothing here.
There's nothing, and then you're like, oh, I get why people talk about the weather a lot.
Yeah,
I get it now. So yeah,
because improvisers, like, we're going to talk about improv and all that stuff, but there is something that I was talking to my last guest about this, Trent Pancy, who I know you know as well. And he was talking about how, like, improvisers, there's no matter what country we're from, no matter what language we speak, like, there's something that kind of binds us all, and it has a lot to do with how we socially interact with each other. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Like, you know, it's getting to a point too where, like, I can pick out an improviser. Like walking down the street, I'll be like, I bet they're an improviser. Yeah. Like you can just kind of tell. And when you start talking to somebody, you can almost get a feeling right away. You're like, okay, you've either taken classes or you are an improviser, just because I think we're also more willing to kind of, in a great way, be foolish and kind of look silly.
Yeah, and definitely.
And hold conversations, right? I mean, I think that's one thing is we're not as afraid to have conversations with people. For us, it's not as much of I'm not sure what I'm going to say. Like we're okay getting into that world where we don't know somebody who could just talk to them. I think it's easier for improvisers for sure.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. We could talk about this all day, but I want to get into you.
I mean, don't you think like you could be at a party and you're like, oh, I knew you did improv. Like, don't you get a sense of that sometimes?
Well, there definitely, but sometimes what I find is that person who I kind of hone in towards hasn't done improv, but if you put them in a class, they would immediately go, oh, where's this been? You know, they just they have that kind of inherent mindset without having been exposed to the art form.
Yeah, you know who I have an attraction to at parties is people who are alcoholics, whether sober or not. I'm like, because I haven't had a drink in over 12 years now. But when I'm thank you. And when I'm at a party with someone, I tend to find either the ones who are also sober or someone who's like, oh yeah, I get your speed. So there's some unknown attraction I think I have for that kind of energy.
Yeah, because really what we are as improvisers, like, not to simplify it too much, but we recreate fake social interaction for entertainment
All the time, right?
Like, that's what Adam Higgins likes to say. We're practicing conversations.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you go, and sometimes don't you find you're in a conversation with someone and you're like thinking to yourself, I'm never going to talk to this person again. Let's see what this is all about. I do that all the time, where I'm like, let's see where this ride goes, because this, for other people, they might step away. For me, I'm like, this is a very interesting, unique person. I'm never going to talk to them again. But all right, let's see what they're all about.
Let's ride this wave. See what happens.
Yeah.
And I find that, I would say, a very different, because we've both lived in Chicago and LA, and I feel like you find those interesting people in those situations, very different types in the two different cities.
Oh, for sure. Like, they are, people, when I said, oh, I'm gonna move, they're like, oh, aren't you concerned with like the fake people? And I go, well, there are fake people everywhere, no matter where you go. But then you get here and there definitely are. It's definite in some ways, very similar, in a lot of ways, very, very different. Those two places, for sure.
Yeah, it's heightened, to borrow an improv term. You've got fake people. Hold my beer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, Jason, this is amazing already. Let's go on you let's dive back into you, the improviser. At one point in your life,
please, Rich, let's get back to me. Thank you.
We haven't gotten to you.
More about me.
Oh my God. Well, I want to know about you because at one point you weren't an improviser in your life, and then you became one, and I want to know how that happened.
Yeah, I think like most improvisers, I was somewhat lazy and directionless, and I very much enjoyed team things. Like, I was an athlete and played sports a lot, so the team was always something that was important to me. Like, I tried stand up once, and it just didn't work for me. I entered a contest for it was at Joliet Mall in Joliet, Illinois. I drove way out. I was living in the south suburbs of Chicago, and I placed second, which was not a big deal because the third place finisher was my friend and I improvising Hans and Franz from SNL. We were and I was like, I had more fun doing that, which I didn't know was improv. It was just like, let's just get up and riff. And so that was my what I loved most, is making my friends laugh and doing bits with my friends, which I turned out, later on, I'm like, oh, that's improv. But at the time I was like, I didn't want to do stand-up, but comedy was such an important part of my life. Like, my dad would wake me up on Sunday nights to watch like Fawlty Towers or the Two Ronnies or the Ernie Kovacs show, which would be running on the public broadcast channel in Chicago. So I always loved that, and I loved making them laugh. And my dad had such a great sense of humor. We would go through drive-thrus, and at the end of his order, he'd say, "Can we get that to go?" And like, half the people would laugh at that, and the other half would be like, "It is to go." Like, they didn't quite get it. So and I remember it was 1991. I was finishing up I was a senior in college. They gave me a Christmas present of classes to take improv at Second City. And I go, cool. I don't know what, like, I knew of Second City. I had never seen a Second City show. They go, we think you would like this. And so I said, all right. And I would drive I think it was 3 hours from going to school to take a Saturday class at noon. And then most of the time I would drive right back to school. And I kept doing that because I had so much fun, but I met a group of people and we kind of stuck together through the classes. And so my first 3 levels were improv. We just learned like improv games. Maybe level 4. So my 4th level, we wrote sketches, and my 5th, we had a graduation show that was supposed to run 3 nights, and it was a graduation Second City style review. And the director, there was a Second City in the suburbs in Rolling Meadows called Second City Northwest. And the producer there, Cheryl Sloan, who was the daughter of Joyce Sloan, who was the Second City producer for 50 years, Cheryl said, hey, do you all want to extend your student show? So we ended up doing our student show for a year on Monday nights on a Second City stage. Loved it. Never, and still to this day, I've never wanted to be like on main stage, because I'm like, no, I like doing it with my friends. I saw so much happening that I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in a group where I don't like everybody and it just becomes more competition. So I had never had a desire to be on Second City main stage or on SNL, nothing like that. I just was like, oh, my friends and I are getting to do this cool thing. And then after our show ran for about a year, they said, do you want to do a best of Second City Northwest? So we ended up for another year doing like the best of, and it was material from like Dan Castellaneta, Carell, Stephen Colbert, Amy Sedaris, like Nia Vardalos, like all these amazing performers. So we got to do our material. Then we got to do their material, which was unbelievable. And I was not like, I want to perform. I was just like, how fun. And then a guy in our group said, my buddy Bob Dassey, who said, I heard about this guy, Del Close. We should go take classes there's a place called Improv Olympics. And we were like, all right. And it was Improv Olympics. And at one point it was with an X at the end.
Okay.
And the origination of that theater was short form. That's why it was called Improv Olympics. David Shepard started it with Sharna Halpern, and it was short form originally. But by the time we got there, Del was there. And so it was like, he was developing long, wanting it to be long form for, improv for improv's sake. And so I just kept taking classes, and then I auditioned for Comedy Sports. And so at one time I was doing a show at Second City at IO and Comedy Sports.
Wow.
All like the same, 3 times or 4 times a week. And so that's how I got into improv. But I wasn't like, it's still at that point, there was a dead end job. It was, because we were lazy, there was no like advancement. You had 5 or 6 jobs. Well, let's see, ETC and main stage, and those weren't even improv. So like, you had like the touring company was pretty much the only chance you got to get paid. And I did Comedy Sports, and we got my first show. I think I got $4,
nice,
which is more than a lot of people get now, man.
By the time I joined Comedy Sports, they had been raised to $10. So,
whoa. So I got into it that way, and I just kept taking classes, and I was like, oh, I just kept performing. But again, when I first started, if it was then what it is now, I probably wouldn't have done it, because I didn't want the thought of like there was a dead end was appealing to me. It was like, great, we're meeting in a basement, we're just gonna goof off, and that's fine. But if it was like you're going to make a house team, or like that's the goal, I probably would have backed away. I wouldn't have done it, honestly.
Wow, that's so cool that improv caught you at that time, because like for my generation, everyone that moved to Chicago was gunning for those jobs. It was very like boiler room, and like now that I think about it, it feels real gross. But like at the time, I was just like, I was so caught in the game, I didn't see the game for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were 6 teams at IO plus the family when I was there, and you were on a team level 1. Like that's why you went to Improv Olympic, was you were promised to get on stage the fastest. So week 4 or 5, I think, was when most people were trying to do a Herald after never knowing about it. So it's like, can you imagine like 4 weeks into barely understanding or being told what it is, now you're on stage doing it?
Nah.
Yeah. And you're just like, you're confused. My friends would come out, they're confused, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. I think we're supposed to repeat something. Like it was just it was a mess. The early days was just, for me, a mess.
But it's funny that you talk about how like an appealing thing to it was that it was a dead end, and yet here you are doing it and doing it for a living, have been doing it for a living forever, right? And it even took you to Europe for a little while.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I back in 2000, I think it was 2015, I taught at the Barcelona Improv Festival,
Nice.
which kind of changed things for me, because through there I met different contacts and I met different people, and they said we can't really pay you what your rate would be, but we can offer you this much and we can put you up, and then you'll be able to meet other people from around the world. And so I went, okay. And I always wanted to go to Barcelona. And I was standing in front of the place I was staying at. And this guy walks up to me and he goes, we just start talking, and he was sober and I was sober. Like, I didn't know who he was. I don't know if he knew who I was. We were just having, again, improvisers. Yeah. I found out he's an improviser. He goes, I have a theater that is just opening in Copenhagen. I was like, oh, cool. That sounds great. Congratulations. He emails me like maybe 2 months later and says, hey, I'm having a festival in a month. Do you want to come over and teach?
Wow.
And I was like, sure. I go, let me check, because I had just I moved to LA. So I was in, I think I was in LA at that time, and my daughter was real young, and she's now 5, but I have a son who's 2 years older. So I said, well, I have to figure out like childcare and stuff and get my classes covered. Let me get back to you. So I do all that. I get back to him, and I go, yeah, I'm all set, man. It's an X. If they can't do it, I want you to come. And I was like, wait, you're just asking, you didn't ask me to come. You were asking me for my availability. And I had already changed all this stuff around. All right. But I knew who he was. I knew who he was talking to, and I knew they weren't going to do it. I was like, they're not going to come. Like, either their demands are going to be too much. So I ended up going, and then that was in Copenhagen. And fast forward, I did the next festival the following year, and then the two guys who ran that theater came out to LA to kind of scope out how other improv theaters do their thing, and we talked. And the next thing you know, I'm offered a contract to do a 7-month stint as the artistic director and head of training for Improv Comedy Copenhagen. So I moved there for 7 months, and it changed my life. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. I can't even imagine. I'm like, it's so hard for me to be like, you're doing improv. You have an improv theater. You're doing it and people are coming and they're seeing the show, and you're doing long form. And it just blows my mind. I'm just so incredibly thankful and blessed, and I'm excited that that's where improv is now. Like, people know about it. But when I started, it was like, well, have you ever seen Saturday Night Live? Kind of like that, but we make it up. Like, that's how you would tell people, and they're like, sure. Hey, I don't get it, man. And then Whose Line came, and that changed the game, because now people had a reference. But Rich, like as well as I do, when you tell people improv and they come to your show, if they've never seen improv, they think it's stand-up. They think it's stand-up or it's scripted. Sure. They don't understand it's improv.
Well, because it's so confusing. There's the big chain of the Improv, is a stand-up club. I've never understood that one.
Right.
I think the owner was just like, how can I screw over a bunch of other kinds of comedians later?
Improv.
Okay. No one's improvising.
Okay. You know who used to own that? I don't know if they still do. Is there was an actress, Jamie Gertz, back in the Her dad was the owner of the Improv Comedy Club for a long time. Yeah, he was the owner there. At one time in Chicago, I was in Comedy Sports that was in the back room of the Improv in Chicago. And so they would mass call people, free tickets, 2-drink minimum. So they would just have people coming in. You would order a drink, they'd immediately bring you 2 of whatever you ordered. So if it was like a drink in a novelty glass, they bring you 2, no questions asked. That's how they made their money. But there were times doing that improv show, and Comedy Sports is, it's a short form show, and you have somebody dressed as a referee, and it's like teams, and it's a competition, quote unquote. But the ref would come out we would be in that room, and we would, as the ref would say, anybody here ever seen competitive improv? And dude, the first couple weeks, 10, 20 people get up, leave right away. Right away. They're like, yep. So you were like, we would sit there. The green room was downstairs, and you climbed up these stairs, and as soon as you open the door, you're basically on stage. So we would be behind that door going, all right, louder, faster, funnier, louder, faster, funnier. Let's get them. And it taught me real quick to be like, get out there, be loud, get them, keep them. And it became a badge of honor to be like, did everyone stay the whole show? And then pretty soon they did. But like early, the first couple weeks doing a show there, people thought they were coming to see stand-up.
Wow.
And they're like, why is there AstroTurf? Why is there a scoreboard? They didn't get it.
So you've already touched on this. Can we talk about short form and long form? You have done so much of both, and I know that you're a fan of both. But you were improvising back in the day where, at least based on what I've heard, they were very separate art forms at one point. Is that accurate? Oh,
for sure, man. We used to have parties. I lived in an apartment with a couple other improvisers, and it was a 3 flat where each floor basically were all improvisers.
Huh.
And it would be like, in the front room would be improv Olympic and long form. In the kind of the middle area would be short form. And then at the other end would be like Second City folk, and then annoyance people out on the porch smoking. But it was definitely like a short form got no respect from anybody who's long form, and still to a little bit that way now, where it's like there's a certain element of snobbery. And in one way I get it. If your experience of short form is somebody teaching you shortcuts and gimmicks for a game. And and we've done those shows with people who are like I remember doing a short form show once, when we're getting ready to do the show, it was for another Comedy Sports City, and the guy said, okay, you're going to be the doctor, and I'll be and I was like, this is right before we're getting ready to do the scene. So I get that, but I'll tell you what, if you put 10 short form shows up against 10 long form shows in front of an audience, the short form shows would do so much better. The audience would enjoy them more. Yeah. I think both benefit. Like long form can help your short form, and short form can help your long form. You don't have to be good at either one, but you just have to appreciate it. And now just be thankful people know about improv. Too many times it's like, humans love to be in clubs, Rich, and then they love to be in secret clubs in the club.
Right.
So it's like
walls.
Right. Walls. Not only am I a long form guy, I'm an IO guy. Oh, I'm a long form UCB guy. I'm a long form annoyance guy. All of that stuff. And my friend David Escobedo puts it really well. He goes, instead of having communities, we should have an ecosystem where we're building improv. Who cares what it is? Like Middleditch and Schwartz, a perfect example.
Yes.
I've heard people like diss on that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They're on Netflix. And if they bring people into improv, if those two guys open the door for some people and open the door for us to get known, I'm all for it. So for me, I'm like, I think there are benefits in both. I think both really do well. And you're also a long form, short form player. And short form just makes you make quicker decisions.
Yes.
Get to it. More short form, like when you're playing long form with a short form improviser, the object work is stronger. There's no waffling. It's like, here's our thing. They can also, short form, you learn how to play the show, not just the games. You learn how to, what's your place in the show each night. And I don't think you do that enough with long form.
Yeah. Comedy Sports taught me how to read the room. And of all the comedy skills I've ever learned, that was by far the most, because I remember performing on cruise ships where the audience, half of them didn't speak English or didn't speak English very well. And so, okay, this room needs big physicality, big emotion, like what does this room need? And I don't think we do a good enough job of that in improv, but I think long form definitely doesn't do a good job of it.
I think 100%. I think long form people have this attitude of, like they put so much importance on the name, like our team name is going to bring people, which I don't think it does. And then it's like you're doing three long form groups. Most of the time, the three are pretty similar in energy, so you're not changing the energy.
Sure.
Like you said, you're not reading the room. You're not like, oh, the team before us characters were crushing in this room. So let's hit characters in this one, because we have to serve the audience. And too many times long form improvisers, in my experience, want to be like, oh, screw the audience, or like they just don't get it. It's like, then do it alone in a basement for nobody. Like if that's your thing, great, but then don't ask an audience to come out who also, let's be honest, when you say improv, the audience is there to laugh. And I heard an improviser once say, oh, the worst thing to happen to improv is the word comedy after. And I'm like, what? That's the best thing. People want to laugh. So allow them to laugh. Don't exclude your audience, which I think sometimes happens in long form. Short form, we include the audience all the time because we're constantly going to them. Long form, we exclude them at times, and they watch a show and they go, I gave a suggestion of pineapple, which they took. None of this had a thing to do with a pineapple. I didn't see why they don't see the jump you go from A to C. If they see that progression, then they get it. But they're like, why are you then taking a suggestion if you're not going to use it? I was taught the suggestion is a challenge from the audience. And it's a wonderful challenge. What can we do with this? That's the way I look at it, is like, oh, our suggestion is this? Great. Like if it's every show I do is pineapple, I can come up with so many, like it's between the people and your brain power and the room and the energy. You could constantly do new shows based on that. But a lot of times, people get mad at the suggestion. They get mad at the relationship they're in. They get mad at, oh, we're stuck in this room. Like there's a lot of being upset in long form where I'm like, just enjoy it. Why are you put off? Don't be put off.
Well, and just to add to your point, I think short form, for me specifically, it teaches me how to take more risks.
Yeah.
That, a lot of long form, in my experience, is people playing versions of themselves. They play so grounded that it's boring, right?
And not boring interesting either. Like boring can be interesting.
Sure, it can be a game in and of itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm talking about it's like grounded is great, but you also need fireworks on top of the ground, or else there's no show.
Well, I mean, I think you're right on. I think it's, you in a short form show, I can take a bigger risk because I know if this fails, we ain't coming back to it. In long form, it's like you take a big risk, it fails, but then that's the only thing recognizable. So you're like, oh, do I have to be that doctor again? I don't remember the dialect I used. I don't even remember who I was. Please don't call me back as that doctor.
I got called out on a show recently, and a guy, it was in Zoom, so he private messaged me on Zoom, and he goes, play the DJ. And I went, I don't remember the DJ.
Oh,
I forgot the DJ. Who's the DJ?
I'll give it a shot.
I rewatched the show, and it was like two totally different accents, two totally different. I just literally just made a whole new character choice because I was like, I don't remember this DJ.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I love it. It's like I'm so much more in the moment, and like part of me also I think likes playing faster.
Yes.
Of like just get to it. What's the thing? Let's explore that as much as we can. And if I become very like meandering in scenes, then it becomes a lot harder because then I start questioning what I'm doing and I don't make strong choices, and then pretty soon I've zoned out and I'm in my head, and it's like this is not fun for anyone.
Yeah. If I were to describe you specifically as someone who's been able to watch you and play with you a number of times.
Yes, Rich. Yes, please.
You're just playful. You're playful Sukow. Like you show up to the green room already in full on kitten mode. You're like, play? We're going to play? We're going to play? We're going to play? And it's like, and I love that. I'm like, yeah, the world is boring. Like this is where I come to play. And a lot of improvisers will come in and, what's up? I guess we'll warm up, whatever. And you come in like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? Like that's not how you act, but that's in my mind. That's how your brain is going.
Well, thank you for that. I think you're right on. I think it's like I've got no time to waste not having fun.
Yeah.
And like if you want to not have fun, that's cool. And even in a scene, I'm not going to allow a scene partner to keep fun from me. I'll have as much fun. Like, man, whatever you want to do up there, I'm down with. And if you want to argue or yell or whatever like that, I'm cool with that. I'll take it and I'll make you argue more because that to me is fun. So I don't want to be too cool for school because I'm not. But too many times people come out and they're like very like, and I think it's a lack of vulnerability, right? I think it's a lack of wanting to play. I think there's some sort of reward in being like, you know, distant or not cool. And it's like, awesome. If that works for you, great. The party train's leaving and I'm gonna be on board. If I'm not on board, that's why I'm like, I think the show starts the moment you leave your house, honestly. The moment you get in that car, the show's already going. And then once you get to the theater, that's the next phase of the show. And for me, I gotta warm up. And that might just mean, hey man, how you doing? Like, it might just be connecting with someone. It might be zip zaps up, whatever. Again, like you said, read the room, read the team you're with. You know, do you need to get out of your head and forget about the week? Then yeah, for sure, do some sort of silly warm up, but get in a chance to play. And if you're having fun, people watching you are going to have fun as well. When you're trying to, I guess when you're trying and when you're trying to create, I don't know, some sort of perfect format, it becomes real hard to watch people. Effort becomes, you know, my buddy says effort is ugly on stage, and I agree. And I'm like, if you're having fun, you're not going to it's not going to be an effort to have fun.
Right. Oh my God, that's a lesson for life.
Yes, for sure. Improv is right. Improv is life. And you go, the stuff I learned in class that benefit me on stage or in exercise, if I apply that to what I'm doing in my life and I go, all right, stay present, follow the fear, assume positive intent, surround yourself with people who get you, drop your ego, leave it at the door. If you listen, stay, you know, be empathetic, like all of those are traits that make great human beings.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Two things that are the same thing, but two separate incidents from you. One, in your improv nerd with Jim McCrane that you did only a few months ago, I believe, or last year, you said, if I were to write a book, it would just be one page, and it would just say yes and that would be it. Yeah. Right? Also, like 10 years ago or whatever it was, when we were doing the faculty jams at Second City Chicago together, every single time I did the show that you were doing it, you would walk into the green room and you would say the same thing. And it was my favorite thing. I quoted you a million times. You'd walk in and you go, what form are we doing tonight? Yes, and? Cool. And it's my favorite thing because yes, and is so important. And it is more important, I think, than form and so many other things. Can you tell me, what does yes, and mean to you?
It first and foremost comes from building off my partner. Like, whatever your idea is, that sounds great, and let me add to your bit. What's the bit? I don't want to change the bit. What's the bit? I'll add to it. You want to say you're sad? I'll be like, great, let me help you get more sad, or let me be sad. Like, it takes the pressure off of me. It allows people to be heard and build something together. You and I doing a scene, if our brains are focused on the same thing and we're not competing for the creative space, and you go like, hey, let's, you know, we're fishing. I can go, oh yeah, and you're my father, or and I caught a fish. Like, we would probably catch a fish, honestly, right? It'd be like, if you say fishing, we're gonna catch a fish. I mean, catch a fish. Catch a fish. But to me, I hear you and I want to add my utmost support without judgment. You know, yes and means deferred judgment too. It's like, don't judge. So it's accept and build, accept and build, accept and build. And you can yes and somebody when they don't even say anything, but they give you a look and you can go, cool, we're going that way. But it's the utmost, for me, it's being as selfless as possible and leaving my ego at the door and going, let me help you make your idea good. Let me see what I can do to not just yes and, but like yes exclamation point and ... exclamation, like that passion behind it. Where it's like, yeah, like I remember Jack Bronis and I, one of the first shows I ever did with him, he was another member of that faculty jam. So you get on stage with a guy like Jack, and he's an improv luminary. So I remember it was like a bucket list thing for me is to do a scene with Jack Bronis, because he was part of the Improv Institute, which back in the day in Chicago was one of the only other stages to do improv before like all these other, you know, before like IO or the Annoyance. It was like the Improv Institute was the place to be. Yeah. And we did a scene where we were standing on tables in the DeMott Theater as dancers, as exotic dancers. But he and I were talking about like dreams and the meaning of life. And I thought, this guy, I'm with you 100%. So, and he would not let you dumb things out.
No.
He would call you out on stuff. And so for me, that allowed me to relax and be more vulnerable and say, what's your idea? How can I help with it? Not, well, let's compete with ideas. I know you've got an idea. I also have an idea that's similar that I'm going to say yes to, but I'm not going to mean it. So you have to mean that. And the yes is like, you watch great improvisers, they're always like kind of shaking their head. They're always like, they never try to change the thing. They're like, let me fit within your thing and let me help build your thing. Like a guy like John Hildreth is another guy who he's just like the yes and machine. And he just never judges anything, but he makes quick decisions that support what you're doing. So for me, it's all about that support. And it goes back to the team aspect of, what's my role? What's my role in the show tonight? What can I do to make this show the best thing possible? What can we do to agree together? And so right away, it's like, absolutely, don't offer a bit to me and then get mad if I follow through with it harder than you do, because it's like, you give an idea just a little bit, I'm going to add on top of it. So like accept and build, say yes, and then add to the bit. What's the bit that you're trying to do?
Oh, so beautiful.
Another thing too is what I heard recently is don't get the laugh, give the laugh. And I was like, oh, I love that. Don't get the laugh, give the laugh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to steal that. One thing I like to say, and it goes exactly with what you said about judgment, is like judgment comes between yes and. So the more judgment you have, the farther apart yes and are from each other.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, replace that judgment with curiosity.
Oh.
All right. I mean, and anything, Rich, here's another great thing. None of this stuff I'm telling you is my original thought. It's all things I've curated from other people. And I go, that works for me. That works for me. And when somebody said that, they're like, replace judgment with curiosity. You're never going to go wrong in those scenes, right?
Yeah.
So
yes.
You're going to be interested. Be interested, not interesting. If you're interested in what's happening, you'll be interesting. But too many times we try to be interesting. The format has to be interesting, all of that. And that gets in the way with the yes and how many shows have you done, honestly? What percentage of shows when you were in your life, you're at a point now where you're like me, you're going to have fun up there. It doesn't matter.
Sure,
you're going to find your spot. But how many shows have you done or seen where right before they go on stage, they go, got your back, and they do that tap, got your back, and then they go out and they don't have each other's backs for the show? I see it all the time. It's like, got your back, got your back. Somebody walks on. I'm your grandma. No, you're not. I hate you, grandma. And they think that's serving the scene. So I was thrown off the first time somebody patted me on the back and said, got your back. And then a whole mass of people in a green room was like, got your back. And I go, isn't this assumed? Like, why are we doing, shouldn't that be an assumption that of course I've got your back, but for some reason now it becomes this ritual that we do, but we need to really meet it and then show it on stage.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like I just finished the Michael Jordan documentary recently, and if anyone has the right to say he's the best at anything, it'd be Jordan. Yet he the whole time talked about it was the team that won. It was the team, right? And no matter how funny you are or I am or anyone is, if the team isn't a unit, the show's not going to be good.
We used to I remember the group I was in, it was called Waka Malaka, and that was the class that was it was myself, Ed Dassey, Bob Dassey, Liz Allen, Judy Fab Jance.
Holy crap.
And Ed Brown, who was an amazing performer as well. I remember Ed Brown, we were doing party quirks, and his quirk was picking your nose. And Ed Brown was this 6'2" beard, long ponytail, former merchant marine, big guy. He got up there and he went, the new Cosmopolitan, do I want this one or that one? And it blew my mind. I was like, pick your nose could be select your nose. But that was my first group. And I remember we used to apologize after shows for getting laughs because we took it that seriously of like, that's not our job. Our job is to set up. And so I don't think that's a healthy way to look at it anymore, but I think it was ingrained in me of like, there's something bigger. Don't go for that initial thing. See if you can set somebody up to do it and let them get that, rather than it becomes a fight for who's going to get to the funny line fastest and how often can we do it. So when I first came up, it was pretty much, drilled into us of like, yeah, there's something bigger than like trying to come up with these things by yourself. So create it together, build this stuff together. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. I love it. Let's talk about teaching. So you were an improviser, you were performing. At what point, and what was the story behind you going from that to being a teacher of improv?
I was on tour with Comedy Sports. This was probably, maybe a year, maybe a little bit longer after I was really new. This was like a year. When I got in October of '93, so a year and a half. I forget how long, but I was on tour, and the person who was supposed to lead the workshop was tired. So they're like, hey, can you take them through a warm up? And I was like, I've never taught before. And they go, just teach the one you like to do. So I was like, all right. And I taught Zip Zap Zop.
Nice.
And I was like, wow, this is cool. Like, they're listening to me. All right. And so that was like my intro into teaching. And then from there, it became something of, we might be doing like a corporate workshop, or, I need a sub. Like, my availability became key because I was available. Mm-hmm. So the more available I was, the more people knew, I can rely on him to become a teacher. I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher, but once I started really doing that, I fell in love with it. And I'm like, I love helping people rediscover their passion, or discover it for the first time, or see the magic or the light bulbs go off. Like I really love that part of it. And I love when people come to me and said, I had a bad experience at theater XYZ and I was never going to take improv again. And then I took your class and it reignited that passion. So I learned it from Martin DeMott, who said, if everyone took one improv class, the world would be a better place. And now it's like, that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to do that. But I started off, and I would say for anybody who's interested in teaching, start off and do it for free. Like,
yes,
get a couple of people, especially now on Zoom, just say, oh my God, hey, yes. I want to test out an exercise, or I'm looking to get into teaching. I need 5 people or 6 people. Like, and my buddy and your pal as well, Tony Llewellyn, said one of the greatest things I've ever heard. It was that time at Westside. Do you remember when they made the transition to like viewpoint style teaching?
Yeah.
So, and it was great. Like, Levin and Annie O'Connor were the new heads of education, artistic director, and they wanted to go towards this viewpoints based improv, which is like based on a dance technique. And there's like architecture, tempo, duration. Like, there's I think 9 pillars of that. And I remember I bought the book. I'm reading it. It's a very dense read. And it's not to do with improv. It's viewpoints with dance. And so I'm reading this and I'm looking at the new curriculum. And this was, I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
3 or 4, something like that.
3, 4. And I'm very confused. I'm going into the first night of this brand new, and it was the exercise where like you have students like walk in lanes for like 20 minutes. And I get the point of it, but I'm like, how am I going to explain this? And I saw Tony and I go, hey, Tony, what do you think of this new curriculum? Man, you nervous? And he goes, hey, I just got to stay 1 week ahead of the students. And that kept with me forever. I'm like, you just got to be 1 step ahead of the students. Try not to teach things you don't know.
Yes.
Don't pretend you know stuff. And as a teacher, talk less, get them doing more. Like, you don't have to know all the answers. You can also say as a teacher, hey, man, that exercise, I didn't explain it well, or, well, that didn't go well, or, okay, let's move on. Like, don't be afraid to apologize and say, like, hey, that didn't work, but thanks for trying it. So, yeah, there are a couple of things. I had another teacher once say to me, over prepare and then throw it out when you get in the class. And those are a couple of sayings that really help me as a teacher. It's like, I over prepare, and then when I get into the class, I kind of read the class and I go, oh, what do they want? What are they looking for today? And it kind of becomes clear.
Yeah, I always spend time before the class making sure like I have more than enough to cover the time.
Yeah.
And then I spend time after the class going through and recording what we actually did, just so I can keep a
Yeah.
record of it, because it's never the same.
I got a highlighter and I just highlight the ones we did because I'm like, it's a mess. Yeah, it's a mess. And then I go, okay, like, all right, we did. So then, like, here.
There it is. Oh, there it is. Peeking
So
behind the curtain.
I just go back and I'm like, okay, we did that. Okay, not that one. So it just makes it easier because otherwise I forget and I go back and I'm like, did I cover all this stuff? I don't think so.
What is a lesson that you teach as a teacher that you learned not from being taught it, but learned from actually like doing? What is something you wish that your teachers had taught that you now teach?
I think one thing is like basic stage techniques of projection and exercises to help increase your volume without blowing out your throat. Turn out to the audience. I'm sure I was taught this stuff, but I don't think we spend a lot of time with that. I also don't think we spend a lot of time in class letting students introduce the exercise or the game to get them used to doing that, where I'll say like, the game is, here's how I would introduce it. It's called New Choice. And then after they've seen it a time or two, I go, who wants to try and do that? Like I even have done that in level A to be like, that's a whole nother aspect of improv, the hosting part of it, whether it's fronting a game or asking for a suggestion. I also teach bows. I teach people, I'm like, grab the hand of the person next to you, raise your hand, person in the middle. Are my shoes tied? Yes, my shoes are tied. Like those are little things that you don't get as much of, but it's not just to get them good at hosting, but it's also to instill confidence and to know like, let's figure out another important thing is what's your stage persona? Who are you? And I don't think people teach that enough as well. So I think there are definite like the logistics aspect to the games, but I think also like the element of what you embody when you're up there. When you whisper to the person next to you for whatever reason, people are going to be watching that, not what's happening on stage. So keep your focus up there. Be ready to go. What do you tell yourself before you go on stage? Like say what I'm going to do is good enough. Like these little pep talks you can give yourself and say like, what I'm going to do is good enough. People want this show to go well. Like giving yourself that talk, I think is one of the things that I teach. And sometimes like, I'll be honest, I'll be doing a warm up or an exercise. I'll see somebody do something. I'm like, oh, cool. Let's try that. And I'll come up with something based on just what I've seen somebody in the class do.
Hell yeah.
You gotta be flexible as a teacher as well.
Yeah, and I feel it's so easy, and it's ironic, but it's easy as an improv teacher to get stuck in, well, these 3 games on day 1, this exercise on day 2, and it's like, if it feels stale to you, it's stale to everyone in the room.
Yes, and
even though it's their first time. Yeah,
and change it and go like, I've been like I remember at Second City in Chicago, the head of the training center. I remember going there and messaging him right before I went. I'm like, do you have a syllabus? He goes, somewhere. I go, what am I teaching? He goes, that's a character level. So I was like, characters. But I remember he also said every few months he'll change up and do new exercises and he'll get rid of the things he's doing because of what you said of getting stale. It also forces me to research and go, I need this exercise. I've been teaching it this way. Is there another exercise that can get the same point across? And I'll reach out to people like you or Bronis or, Kimmy Warner or any of these people. And I'll go, what have you taught this? Like, that's how I learned a great exercise in subtext from Jack Bronis is he goes, because I go, I don't know quite how to teach it. I know, I just don't understand. How can I teach this subtext? And he goes, here's an exercise. And I was like, I love it. So I think I love finding new exercises, challenging myself, going up there and going, I taught this for a while. I can't do it. And with Zoom, man, you're forced to do brand new stuff that you can't do or you weren't able to do when you were in person. Yeah. You have to come up with new ways to get that same point across.
I have loved the challenge of Zoom because it is spawned me to I think I've created at least 20 new warm-up / exercises because, it was so easy just to rely on the same ones over and over. in person, and that wasn't stretching me. And I'm thankful that I learned this lesson. Oh, I can't get stale again. Like that's not gonna be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with this, it's like between being online and also the global audience now that we have access to, I think you're going to be constantly developing new things. And like, there are some great resources online, and there's some great online improv teacher groups, which again is like, it blows my mind. It blows my mind that we're succeeding at doing this virtually.
Yeah.
Improv. It blows my mind in the same respect of how many improvisers don't want to do it and are like longing for the old days, like more veteran than newer performers. But definitely it blows my mind that they don't have to like it and they don't have to do it. But to me, I'm like, this is such an opportunity. And it is not like it was, because this is a new chapter. So this, I think, is here to stay. So embrace this and be like, how can we use this technology? How can something as simple as like getting close to the camera, we can do so much easier here than, and it's right. It's so much.
It's got a bigger impact than it would just,
impact.
Moving a foot forward on stage.
Right. So I'm like, I don't know, embrace the change and be like, I'm excited. I'm replacing judgment with curiosity and going, how does it work? That's another thing with improv. It allows me to say, how could this work? How could not? There are reasons it can't. I get that. How could it work? How could it work? How could it work?
I love it. And you've embraced it like crazy. How many of episodes of 10 Minutes with Jay have you done? Do you know?
It's 10 minutes with,
not
me, but 10 minutes with them.
10 minutes with other person.
Yeah. And I think it might be near 100. And the reason I'm doing it, honestly, is because if I waited, it would have passed me by and I would have been overwhelmed. And I knew, okay, when the quarantine hit, I was still teaching at, like, Second City was still doing classes, like other theaters have kind of paused. So I was like, I got to know how to do this because I've got a class in a week. So I had to jump in. I'm like, I'm going to jump in 100%. I'm going to look at this like an opportunity. If this is as bad as it's going to be, we're going to be here for a while. And so for me, I was like, the only way I could do it to learn is to do. And so then it got me thinking, who are people I don't get to perform with a lot? Who are people I love performing with? And now I can reach out to them and do it. All right. So why not? I had nothing else going on.
Sure.
It's like we went to zero revenue overnight, zero income.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, let me jump in and figure this thing out. And now it's like, oh, cool. With Zoom, there are breakout rooms. So then students can be doing more work because you can put them in breakout rooms and I can pop in and out of the rooms and course correct. And what an exciting time to be. And what if we have costumes? I mean, you were with Comedy Sports. I love doing improv with costumes. It's the best. So now we can do it or we can use actual props and explore this and be like, let's be more cinematic. And I've seen like a really good evolution of improv where people are forced to slow down. They're forced to connect. They're forced to not speak over each other. And it's something that's becoming really beautiful. And who knows what's going to happen after this. But I think there is going to be some form of virtual improv from here on out. I just don't know. Right now it's 100% virtual. Yeah. But it's like, at what point is it going to be like 40% virtual and 60 live? Who knows?
Where can people find you? What plug away?
Well, they can always look up me on Facebook. They can find me at Today Improv. That's the company that I have, and we teach improv for regular folk and business. I do a lot of corporate training as well, helping with like communication. And now a big thing is empathy. So we do a lot of I've been doing online virtual training, which is great. Nice. And so, either on Facebook or on my YouTube channel, YouTube/Today Improv, where I put everything I've done virtually goes up on that channel. So usually I stream it to Facebook and then put it on YouTube. So I have a lot of these 10 minutes which is people all over the world. I've done a couple with a lot of silence. I did one 10-minute piece actually with my friend Vanessa Anton, and it was all silent.
I got to check that one out. I love Vanessa.
It was crazy. And then I just did one with my friend Maggie Nolan, and I swear, man, the first 4 minutes was silent, and it was what she said was amazing. It was one of my favorite scenes I've ever done. And what she said just it was perfect. It was perfect, and it was a beautiful scene. So I put those up there. I also do something called the Court of Public Opinion, where I put two friends against each other in a mock court setting where it's like you argue something unwinnable, like cake versus pie,
Nice.
Or red versus green. And so I put that up there on YouTube as well, YouTube/Today Improv. So yeah, check those out.
Hell yeah. Jay, you are a beacon of wisdom. Your spirit, your passion, you help this art form. You help the people in this art form. You've been a mentor to me and a friend. I just thank you so much for just everything that you do for improv.
Thank you, Rich. You're the best. And your book's awesome, man. I recommend it to a whole bunch of people. It's so great. So thank you for doing that and putting that book out, man. It's helping. It's helping. And this as well. It was such a blast. And I was really honored that you asked.
Oh, so good. All right, my friend. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
See you, buddy.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about improv, please put them in the comments below. I'm going to do a Q&A episode for my 11th episode, and I would love to answer your question. To get notified about upcoming episodes, subscribe to the Roland and Rich's YouTube channel and click the little bell icon below. Thanks, improvisers, and keep making each other look good.